invited last year to Europe to talk about Agenda 2063, the Africa we want. We said we want a peaceful, prosperous, and integrated Africa. People were asking me, what do you talk about peace? Africa, there is no peace. And at that time, I was very confident in saying, well, in Africa, there is a lot of peace. I could say from Cairo to Cape Town, there's a very few in South Sudan issues with armed conflict, and from Djibouti to Mauritania, just a few, except a small part in Central Africa. And I was very optimistic that maybe we could expect meeting the target of silencing the guns, which is in Agenda 2063, could be probably achieved if we just addressed a few issues in some countries. But now, 2020, silencing the guns deadline, we have more guns blazing across the continent than we did last year, which brings a lot of disappointment. And we wonder whether our governments, when they were deciding to say we will silence the guns by 2020 and put signature on this agreement, were they serious? That's why AACC started last year, actually this year, to mobilize young people to focus on this target of silencing the guns by 2020, which our government's committed to, and we don't think they are doing enough to make sure that it actually happens. We want them to, the young people, because they're the majority in Africa. And I said that all revolutions and all changes in the world mostly come from young people, students and young people, and many leaders of today who are old, and sometimes they feel that the young people are not capable. When they started leadership themselves, they were very young. So we want to challenge young people to say, you must hold our governments and the African Union accountable to that pledge of saying we want to silence the guns by 2020. Now, as we get into December, new guns in Mozambique, new guns in Ethiopia, the seat of AU, new guns, almost in many countries where they have elections, and all these terrorist attacks which we see with guns and other weapons, it's making people feel unpeaceful, and actually the youth lose hope in having a future, because without peace, there is really no development. Where there are guns, children are not going to school. Where there is violence, farmers are not planting. If they are planting, they are not harvesting. So you can't think of development when you do not have peace. And we want the young people to be mobilized, and to mobilize as AACC, to mobilize the people not only in churches, but in other organizations, to say, no, we demand peace. We are tired of this. And to convince other young people not to be lured into violence, like we have seen in some countries like Cameroon, where the young people are actually used by all these groups to kill children, to go into schools and attack schools. And these are young people. We say, no, how can the Christian church, using its presence all over the continent through the AACC, to inspire young people to demand peace, to demand silencing the guns? We are trying to, the youth are trying to collect signatures, which we can submit maybe early next year at the summit, to the leaders to remind them that the young people are demanding to have peace. And for us as AACC, as a continental fellowship of churches, we would like to be part of that, to say, no, Africa is making the whole world tired. Now the world must come to feed people in Ethiopia and Eritrea and Sudan because of violence which is starting in one country. And every time we start violence, we call on the world to come and help us. We are tired of this. We would like the young people to say, no, enough is enough. We are not going to fall into this temptation, and we don't want to be in armed conflict, because without peace, there is no development.
In our work for peace in Africa, we come across different factors or different triggers for the violent conflict, armed conflict that we experience in Africa. Unfortunately, most of those who are involved, who are also considered drivers of it, not actually the triggers, are the youth. We are concerned because Africa is endowed with a massive number of population, or demography of young people, where we can talk about dividends of demography. But unfortunately, the so-called elites in Africa have chosen to engage some of this youth wrongfully. And the need for our youth to sit up and say no to all forms of violence and conflict is now. I mean, it should be even yesterday. Why would they even succumb to whatever incentives that will be given to them to go at each other's throat? We are concerned. Africa should not be characterized by violent conflict. We are not a continent of cannibals. We are not living in a jungle where you eat or be eaten. That narrative must be rejected. And our youth are the only people that can do that, to say no to these forms of narrative, that they cannot in any way be instrumentalized for any form of violent conflict. And of course, the African Union in 2013, at the heads of state summit, following the crafting of what today we describe as Agenda 2063, the Africa we want, a visionary and ambitious development agenda for Africa. And in the flagship projects, one of it is silencing the gun. Unfortunately, I must say this, that it is but a mere slogan. From what we hear today in Africa, silencing the guns is a mere slogan. Because from 2013 to date, Africa is experiencing even new forms of violent and armed conflict. So is it not an aberration? Is it not a contradiction? But here at AACC, that's why youth have been identified from East and Horn of Africa, from the Great Lakes as countries to come. And reason together, reflect, and say, how can we then translate this slogan into concrete action? Because the African Union says, silencing the gun by 2020 is a mirage. That's why it is just but a slogan, not even a declaration that is accompanied by well-crafted written action plan. That is our pain as a religious institution that is interested in the well-being, dignity of the African people. So the youth are here to think through and say, how then can we contribute our own part? Of course, the period is coming to an end when you talk about agenda, silencing the gun by 2020. 2020 is over. But we will take it as just a mere date. But the intent, the spirit, and the letter of the slogan will keep us going. And that has been the emphasis that we have given to these young people, which you can say we are positively radicalizing them to embrace the notion of saying no to any form of violent conflict or armed conflict. So it is not just about silencing the gun, but it is about saying no to any violence, that human life, the sanctity of human life will not be jettisoned. So ours is to say, let us call on our governments, because it is not about as religious people, oftentimes even the political class or elites will say, no, as religious people, talk about going to paradise. No. We cannot only talk about going to paradise, but we will talk about stewardship here on earth. And stewardship involves everything, the political spheres of the life of the people, in all ramifications of human endeavors. So political, social, cultural, religious, economic, all of these spheres. We are calling on the government to be honest, those in leadership, our heads of government, and all agencies of government and all those who are saddled with all kinds of responsibility, even the regional economic communities, the African Union. We call on the leadership to be honest, to be sincere to all its declaration and commitment. Whatever they have agreed upon, let them remain faithful to it. And that is only what will make Africa better.
The AACC has given priority to youth and youth involvement in peace issues. That is why we are having this regional youth forum, East Africa Regional Youth Forum, on silencing the guns in Africa. Silencing the guns, it's an initiative by the African Union, which was initiated in 2013 with a goal to silence the guns by 2020. But as you can see that this is 2020, and we can see that the guns are still alive in the continent. We can see what is happening in Ethiopia, we can see what is happening in Cameroon, in South Sudan, and in North Africa, in Libya. The guns are still alive, the guns are penetrating our societies. And that is why the young people have come together at the AACC as ecumenical young people to discuss about these issues. How is conflict affecting them within the East Africa region? How is conflict changing their lives? The young people have raised some significant issues of displacement because of war, of displacement because of conflict, of separating from their families, of issues of unemployment because there is war, there is no development in their countries. That is why as young people we have come to this forum to discuss these issues and to produce an outcome statement from the AACC, the All Africa Conference of Churches, as ecumenical young people on what the AU must do and what the heads of state must do to honor their commitment to silence the guns by 2020. We have 15 young leaders from different countries in the East Africa region, from DRC, South Sudan, Ethiopia, Tanzania, Kenya, Rwanda, and Burundi, who are here gathered at this All Africa Conference of Churches meeting. These young people have presented different stories from their countries. And as part of the outcome statement, you can pick that the young people are talking about the AU, the heads of state. They need to silence the guns in Africa to ensure that development happens in their continent, in their countries. They also need to silence unemployment in our countries. They also need to silence vices like gender-based violence in their countries. They also need to ensure that education reaches for all, to ensure that young people are not radicalized into violent extremism. That is what the young people are demanding, and they are demanding that the AU must also honor its commitment to silence the guns by 2020, even if it's not going to be possible this year. But we need proper strategies beyond 2020 that will ensure that the AU and the heads of state of Africa will silence the guns and will bring peace to their continent. This is what the young people are asking for, and they need peace and tranquility to prevail on the continent.
One, we need to keep or to call on the dialogue that should bring in the government, private sector, the faith-based organization, the youth and other stakeholders to discuss, but also to forecast on how we can find the best way to restore the peace in Africa, especially in the areas that have been more affected. We're looking, for example, in Burundi, the situation isn't that cool, but also in Ethiopia, DRC and the other countries, but also even in our own countries. For example, I'm coming from Tanzania. It's called a peace country, but we need also to find the means on how to maintain the peace, because we're not yet sure like we'll maintain the peace all the time. So that's one. But the second, we're calling upon the regional institution. They have the big role to maintain and to call for intervention within the nations. A lot of countries nowadays, they are doing election, but then after election, you see there is no respect of constitutional and people's voice during the election. And that's where we have observed a lot of crisis, conflict arising from. Because if people have decided to elect someone as their leader and the people in the power manipulates the election, the results, so it's end up for one group appraising and starts demanding. When they're demanding, it's when you find the community comes in and everyone and the propagandas, and then they disturb the peace in a country. So we call upon, because leadership belongs to people, and let the people's voice be heard, so that we can maintain peace in our community. To my fellow young people around Africa continent, you need to understand that Africa is your home. Africa is where you are born, is where you will live, and is where they will bury you when you die. So you need to put every efforts to make Africa is at peace, because in Africa today we always suffer because of the weapons that they are not produced in here. Look at the countries that are producing weapons. They are safe and they are in harmony. But Africa, where we have not even industries that producing weapons, we are so much affected. So one, we need to call upon for young people to petition around Africa that these countries should stop selling arms to the other groups that they think they are not going to maintain peace. But also the second, for young people, we need to be creative nowadays, because we have that shortage of employment, we understand, and other shortage of and other challenges that happens in Africa. But that should be not the reason behind to engage in activities that they lead to violation of peace and cause conflict in our community. So we need to be creative, come out, bring in the solution, but also bring on the table what you think, so that we can engage in policy and engage the decision-making bodies to find the solution on some of the challenges like unemployment, like youth being raised on decision-making bodies, and the other states that leads to violation of peace.
From this forum, I've learned that the future is now, and as youth, we need to be self-reliant and learn as quick as possible, because the future you want, you are the one to shape it. And as a youth from Rwanda, I'm so honored, I'm so grateful that our country is doing well. So if we need to keep that peace, I need to learn from my leaders, from my elders, so that we may maintain the peace even in the future. I would advise my fellow youth to come up with the action-oriented project and to enhance our contribution for the future of Africa. And I would also request to the AU to support those youth-led projects that for advancing the silencing of guns initiative. And as youth also, I would emphasize more on seeing our contribution for the future instead of blaming any organization, whether AU or AACC. We should always come up with solution. We should always come up with the resolution with our contribution, because the future is ours. And we are so fortunate to have those organizations which are trying or which are supporting us.
This is a great, interesting opportunity to attend the All-African Conference of Churches, which talks about silencing the gun. And my takeaway or the lesson I learned from here, African leaders think to silence the gun in 2020, by 2020, and which is now. I think I heard there is a lot of initiatives in the last year, but still we are behind from the to achieving this agenda. So I am now taking a good knowledge and some good experience from different countries how to silence the gun, and at the same time I am learning how some strategies how we can silence the gun. So this is the main two takeaways for me. The youth is not only the future, it's the present. So they have to start to engage now on this matter, on silencing the gun. Especially the youth have to be the center on the democratization of the politics, which is accommodating different kind of political parties, including the opposition parties. That's the first. Also, the youth have to be in the center of mutual dialogue and in the discussion, and they have to be active in their homeland, Africa.
One of the takeouts I'll go back with is we as Africans, we as the youth of Africa are facing similar problems when it comes to conflict. And it is our collective contribution to work against conflict, because we are the ones being manipulated. We are the ones being used as a tool of committing conflicts within our countries. So it is our collective contribution. We as the youth have to come together and to do away with conflict. In the context of South Sudan, the youth are the majority. The youth carry 72%. And what I would tell the youth is they should get involved in decision making, in peace processes, because the conflict affects them directly. So I would encourage the youth to take up leadership spaces in order to be given space for decision making.